Hi, hello, my name's David Reid and I'm the Head of Student Admissions here at Point Blank. This is our lead course developer, Danny Lewis, and we're here to tell you a bit more about how it all works here at Point Blank Music School. Welcome to Friday Forum Live. Hi, welcome along. As I said, my name's David, this is Danny, if you haven't tuned in before. What we do every Friday is basically give you guys an opportunity to find out a bit more about what we do here at Point Blank. We demonstrate some of the techniques and the tricks that you can learn on the courses and just try and give you a flavour of what to expect. Now, one of the things that we get asked all the time is how the online school works, how the courses work. Now obviously people understand how a real kind of classroom works. You turn up each week, you sit in a room with your tutor and you kind of take your lessons and you absorb all of that information, then you go away and practice. What we've tried to do with the online school is take what we do here at the college in London and adapt it for online learning. So we try to replicate the kind of interaction that you have with a tutor and deliver that online. So the first question that people ask is, well, how does that work? You know, if I'm not in the same room with the tutor, how can he guide me? How can he kind of, listen to my work? How can he give me feedback on how I'm getting on? All of those kind of questions, which are obviously perfectly reasonable questions. So what we thought we'd do today is try and give you a little guided tour of the online school and explain a bit more about how that whole thing works. So I'll do that now. If I dive onto the laptop here, what we'll do is we'll basically just take you through a course. So you basically log in up here in the My Home section. So you can see up here I'm logged in. Mac1 is my username. And that basically gives me access to this area where I can access all of the course information. So I'm logged into the dubstep bass music course on Logic. This is a course that actually took place in April. So this course is now finished, but it will give you an idea of what you can expect on the course. So the week before your course goes live, you've got access to this Getting Started section up here. So I'll have a quick look at that. As you can see, there's a whole series of lessons here that will basically give you everything you need to know before the course starts. So just in terms of technical issues and setup and, just make sure that when the course gets underway, your computer setup is ready to go and you're all set to get stuck into your course. So by the way, classes start at Point Blank on Monday. So those of you that are already enrolled, great to have you on board. If you're thinking about taking a class with us, then watch closely because this is what you can expect. So basically on Monday, lesson 1 goes live. So I can dive into this section here. And as you can see, there's a whole series of lessons down the left-hand menu here. So we'll take a look at some of those just to kind of give you an idea of what to expect. Let's dive in here and you can see the course notes. So each week on the course you've got a whole series of course notes, and embedded within those course notes you've got kind of little sections where you can interact with your tutor. So here for example there's just a little kind of discussion just to sort of kick things off, give everyone a chance to get to know one another. There's a little discussion about dubstep and the kind of, the sounds that have influenced it and kind of where it started out from, where it is now, that kind of thing. If we progress a bit further through the course, you'll see there's also things on, tempo and instruments and things like that. If we move on a bit further, let's have a look. You'll see that there's also some video content embedded in the course as well. So as you work your way through the course, you'll see that there's a whole bunch of tutorial videos that are embedded within the course notes that you can just watch at your leisure. All of this material is available to you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So in that sense there's no kind of timetable. So we have students all over the world. You can log in whenever you like and just work through this video material, watch the tutorials as many times as you like, go back and try them out in Logic, try them out in Ableton, and go through them at your own pace. When you get towards the end of the course, so the end of the week, you'll see that we're working towards an assignment. So I'll talk to you a bit more about that in a second. But essentially, you're working your way through the course across the 7 days. And then at some point you'll probably have a question. There's something that you want to raise as a discussion topic. There's a few different ways you can do that. The first one's the forum. So if you look over on the right hand side here, there's a forum. And you can post any questions that you might have in the forum, and those will get answered by your tutor, or potentially by some of your classmates. You know, a lot of these forum posts turn into quite nice discussions amongst the students as well. So it just turns into a nice sort of lively debate where everyone's kind of throwing their ideas in, and that's very much what the forum's for. The other way you can communicate with your tutor is via the live masterclass that happens every week. So if you've watched Friday Forum before, you'll have seen Danny try and replicate some of these live masterclasses and basically just give you a quick demo of a particular technique or process using Logic or Ableton. He'll guide you through a particular kind of technique, and that's very much what these live masterclasses are all about. It's also a great opportunity for you to chat live with your tutor. So if he's demonstrating a technique during the masterclass and maybe there's something you didn't understand, or maybe you want to ask how that particular technique relates to the music that you're into, that's exactly what the live masterclass is for. And like I said, it's a great opportunity to, you know, get your questions answered by someone who's a very experienced professional producer, someone like Danny. And then I mentioned at the end of each week, you submit an assignment. So that assignment is basically our opportunity to hear how you've interpreted the course material, and what your stuff sounds like. The thing we do here at Point Blank that's completely unique is listen through what you've submitted and give you some one-to-one feedback, exactly the same as you would get in a regular classroom. The way we do that is via this DVR system. So a lot of people ask, what is DVR? DVR is a direct video response. And what that means is when we get to the end of this section here, and you've worked through all your course notes, you'll see that we ask you to submit an assignment. So you can see how that works there. Basically, it's going to be a Logic project file or an Ableton project file or a Cubase project file that you've been working on at home. You upload it, that finds its way to your tutor, and then he can open it up on his copy of Logic or Ableton or Cubase, whatever class you're doing, and he can see exactly how you've put your track together. And then what he'll do is prepare a one-to-one tutorial video just for you based on the track that you've submitted. So rather than just getting kind of generic advice on, you know, how to produce dubstep or drum and bass or trance or all the other sort of, you know, genres that we teach, you're getting one-to-one feedback on your track. And as I said, no one else does that to the extent that we do, you know, of actually going into your track, pulling it apart and giving you some really useful kind of professional feedback on how you can improve. So I'm going to hand you over to the expert now, and Dan will kind of guide you through how this DVR process works. So we're going to look at, you know, an example of some work that a student submitted as an assignment, and we'll get some idea of the kind of feedback you could expect from your tutor. So hopefully that's made things a bit clearer. If it hasn't and you've got any questions, tap away and we'll try and answer them for you as we go. But yeah, I'll pass you over to Danny and he can tell you a bit more about DVR.
Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen now, and what I've got is the assignment page of the first week of this course. So this is the same course that David was going over there, and we've got the examples of the first week projects from the students that took this course. Now I've downloaded the project of this guy Oshi, and I've actually got weeks 1, 2, 3 and 4 here as well. So I'm going to go through, we haven't got enough time to go through the whole DVR process for each week. So I'm going to give you a taster of the kind of things that we'd be looking at. You know, the whole concept here is to take you and develop you over the series of weeks that you're studying with us. So the first week is generally focused on beats. So I've got an example here that this student has created. And on this particular assignment, we have asked for 2 approaches to programming to be made. So one of the approaches is to use MIDI. So using, in this case, the EXS24 sampler. So you can see some data here that's MIDI programming. So that's one aspect of this particular exercise. And then there is also the approach which is to use audio files inside a folder here. So this is another approach. So in terms of the actual assessment of the assignment, what we would do is to take a look at a number of things. We'll be looking at, you know, the actual sounds that the student has chosen, the composition, you know, how things are actually working on the programming side, and looking at if they are doing things like layering, you know, how have they layered those sounds together? Is there anything that we could do to improve what's going on? So you can see inside this folder here, there's a lot of audio files going on. So, you know, this student has actually followed the brief very, very closely. And it's always really good when you're a student of ours to follow the assignment criteria, because then we can actually assess you in a proper way. So this is a collection of beats. I'm going to play this. Let's just have a look and see what he's done. Now you can hear some musical elements there. So, you know, the assessment criteria for this particular week is to focus on the beats. So I'm going to take away the musical elements here. If I was assessing this, then I would just comment on how I was thinking that they sounded in the mix. I actually, you know, and also the compositional side, I actually think they're working very nicely. It feels like it's a good intro. I think that's the sort of thing that would work well in a composition to start off with something like this. I think it works well. And so let's just take a look at what we've got. We've got the audio regions here packed into a folder, which is a great way to organize stuff in Logic. So what I would do is I would just commend the student on following that instruction. We put that content into that first week lesson. So I would say well done for packing the audio regions into the folder. Let's take a look at what's happening here. So I'm going to just have a listen here. There's a frying pan. I'm assuming this is a sound. We've asked the students to have a think about using found sounds, you know, realistic sounds, you know, from around the house, maybe recorded. So this does look as if that's one of those elements. I'm going to solo this. So yeah, that sounds like a frying pan. Just taking a look at what he's done here. This is the sort of thing we do. We take a look at the EQ settings, anything else that's being used. So it's running through a reverb. I would do something like this. I'd bypass, take a listen, put it back on. Now personally, I'm feeling that adds a little bit of a kind of an obvious reverb sound onto that. And that's not necessarily the thing that I would do personally. So what I would do is, you know, when we're doing the assessment of these assignments, we don't always want to put too much of our own personal flavour into this. We want to be really balanced about what's going on. So I would probably give my own personal perspective, understand that he's trying to put his own kind of artistic flavour into that and acknowledge it and say, look, that's fine. If you want to do that, that's cool. Personally, I would just want to strip back the reverb a bit so that it's a little bit tighter. When it comes to reverb, when you're starting off with your tune, if you've got lots of reverb, what's going to happen is potentially you're going to clutter up the mix so that you've got less room to put the other elements that you're going to bring in later on. So on this particular course, the lesson 2 would be a bass line, lesson 3 some musical elements, and then lesson 4 all the kind of extra details to make that into a proper track. So I'd probably just warn him at the moment, don't put too much reverb stuff on, and let's focus on the actual beat now. So we've got here the whole folder, and I'm going to bring up the mixer so that we can see what's going on. The mixer, when you've got a folder, it sort of condenses things down here. So I need to double click on that to expand it, and we can see all of these drum elements. Let me just take that, going to find the, let's come back out of the folder. I just want to turn off the frying pan there. So let's have a look. So here's the beats on their own. Now as a composition, I think this is working really well. Yeah, what's happening is that there's lots of variation, lots of sonic interest. What I want to do is just take a look at some of the things that he's done. So we've got a couple of snares here. Let's have a look at these. I'm just going to move this arrange window up a bit. So the 2 snares that I'm talking about are here and here, so snare 1 and 2. And what I'm going to do is just take a listen to these on their own. Also, I would do something like this. You know, I'm looking at the send, and I'm seeing that he's got a little bit of send level to bus 1. So over here, let's have a look. Bus 1 is a combination of a compressor, space designer, and a channel EQ. So for me, that says that he's using that to add a little bit more space on there. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to bypass the send. And you can hear a big difference there. You know, I think the decision that he's made in terms of adding that is good. It adds a nice sense of energy to the sound. But I want to see how it sounds with the snare combined on snare 2. So we'll have a listen. Now I actually like what's going on with that. It's adding a lot more body to the sound. With dubstep, you would expect the snares to be pretty heavy, you know, so that's working nicely. Let me take off the original snare and bring this back. Let's take off the new one. So I take a look at the EQ settings. Let's take a look and see what he's done. Just going to make, just see what's going on, see what he's boosted. You can see here that he's boosted at 255, boosted this one at 152. This one here is just 3.5, just a little bit. No, where are we? Let's get out. He's shifted these around. So it's 4, just 4K, just a +3. This one's 6. So, you know, in terms of what's going on, he's made some good decisions because he's not boosting in exactly the same area. These are contrasting areas on the EQ. So I'd be picking out saying you made some nice decisions there. I think the two are working together nicely. So this is the kind of thing that we do. We take a look at all of the programming, the decisions made, the EQ, the compression, the settings, everything that's there in that assignment. And, you know, just really just appraise it based on the assessment criteria and see how you guys are doing. So let me just move forward a little bit more. I'm going to take a look at something that might be a very common error, and that's on things like hi-hats. And, you know, it depends on the monitoring. I can't really hear things in great detail at the moment, so I would have to rely myself at the moment on something like the EQ that you can see here with the analyzer, just to make sure there's not too much energy going on. Now, that feels to me maybe there's a little bit too much on the top end. So I'm just going to roll that down. So you see I've applied a high cut at 17K. I'm going to take it up to about 18. I'm going to do that numerically. So just to avoid any excess high frequency energy, I want to check the other hi-hats because the most common problem is the low frequencies. So if you're sampling off of another tune, there may be some bottom end. That one's been nicely clean. So I'd probably say to him, you know, good work. You've used the EQ here and you've reduced those low frequencies. With a hi-hat, with this kind of hi-hat, you probably don't even need all that energy down there. You might even make it really thin. So depending on what else is going on or what else is coming in future lessons, we might recommend to make that thinner. So this is just something to think about. Also maybe on the highs there, because we never know where the source samples are coming from with our students. They could be coming off of records, off CDs, all kinds. So let's take a look. There's another one. I think this one I've already done. Let's come through. Let's take the third one. In fact, there are 4 hi-hats here. So, yep, look, he's done the same again. That's great. So some low cut on there. So when it comes to be honest with you, this is a really good assignment. You know, there's a lot of good work here. When it comes to someone who's done a lot of good work, it's just a matter of going through and just really just picking out the things that you think the student has done well and letting them know that they've done something good. Now this one here is there we go. Yeah, so, you know, all I'm going to say here is just some very subtle tweaks. Oh, wait a second, I've got 5 and 6 hats as well. Let me just check this. Okay, let's take a look at that one. That's got nothing on it. Going to come back. A little bit of an abundance of high frequency energy again. Just going to take that and roll that down. And then let's try 6. That feels like it could really do with thinning out a bit. I can really hear there's quite a lot of body in that sound. I would take this low cut and really roll it up. So it becomes more of a thin, kind of nice, kind of shaker kind of texture. So this is the kind of work that we're going to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift on to the next week. Just, you know, a couple of other checks. I would be making sure that we're not peaking on the master here, that we're not too loud. I would actually encourage him to keep his master fader at 0 here. And if he wanted to be a bit more conservative about the levels before they hit that stereo master, I would do something like this, bring down a utility, and then we can use this to reduce the gain before it hits that master. So just kind of little ways of good practice really, because if you're using the master control here as a volume control, you might forget about it, and then when you bounce, you're going to end up with something that maybe is too hot or too quiet. So that's another little recommendation. So let's take a look at his second week. So here on the second week, if we take a look back and reference the course, we go back to lesson 2, come to the assignment 2. You're going to see that this week is focused on bass and lead sounds. So, you know, the assignment here, also some percussion as well. So we're asking them to design a bass sound and to integrate that into the composition. So here we've got, it looks like after feedback, this particular student has used the MIDI programming of the beat, so you can see that over here, and they've got some new elements added. So we're going to have a listen. Now, looking at this, there are some bounced elements, and this is what happens if you're a student and you have a third-party plugin that your tutor doesn't have. And this particular course does have a third-party plugin as part of the actual syllabus, and that's Massive. And so, you know, we obviously let students know you can use Massive, but if it's anything different aside from the basic Logic instruments, then you're going to need to bounce. So that's what this student has done. So he's bounced out his elements. I'm just going to have a listen to that. Now I'm listening to that sub bass. That actually feels incredibly low, and potentially that's going to be, in terms of the musicality, maybe just a little bit too low. So it's nice to get the actual MIDI data, you know, to get the actual instruments to be able to work with that. Because as a tutor, what I would potentially do is suggest to maybe lift the whole tune up by maybe one semitone or two to allow that bass to sit in a cleaner space. A lot of people, when they're working with sub bass, end up having things too low. You know, it's kind of lower octave. And when things are too low in frequency, even though you think you might want to have a really, really fat sub bass, you're going to find that it's going to swamp the energy of the tune. There's going to be not enough room for the whole thing to be energized. So sometimes transposing the tune up can actually help to give you more energy. So that's what I would like to be able to do. But I'm going to just have a look at these elements and see how they're working together, because it looks like he's got a kind of lead working in harmony with that bass. Now what I would do is, if he's got a sub the octave below, I'd make sure that the lead is cut nicely. Now it does look as if that's what he's done here. So he's got his low cut at 174 Hertz. So he's giving his sub, you know, lots of space there. So just taking a look. I'm not sure about the boost at the 300 Hertz there. So I'm just going to bring that back down here. I want to take a look at what's going on with the spreader, because he looks like he's adding some width there. I'm going to take that off. Back on. So it seems to be working fine at the moment. Let me see how that fits with the other sounder pad. I'm just going to bring this down. One of the techniques that I use, if I want to just judge how I like the level in a mix, is to sort of take it down and then gradually bring it up. That's the kind of thing that you might benefit from as well. So if I bring this up slowly, see what's happening is it's giving more emphasis to that mid bass, whereas before it sounded like it was a bit lost because that was a bit too high. So for me, I'm just taking that higher string pad sound as more of an atmosphere, a slightly more distant atmosphere. So it's brought out that bass a bit more. Let's see how that sounds together. Overall, the beats sound a little bit too loud to me. So I'm just going to see what's going on with those. Now there's a really nice extra texture I heard coming through there. So I would say, you know, basically in terms of a composition, that's a great new additional element. I really like that. I felt that was really adding to that. And once again, sadly, it looks like he's actually bounced this. So I would have to feedback, you know, really just take into account what he's used and just give him a balanced opinion on it. But I can't get in there and change the actual information. That would be the ideal case. So we always do say to our students, if you can, use the instruments that we've recommended for the course so that we can get in there and tweak things if necessary. So that's a lesson 2 job. In terms of the progression, lesson 3, let's take a look at what he's done. Lesson 3 is to take a look at adding musical elements. So there's a whole bunch of examples on the course that the students can follow, and then they can make their own decisions about what to add. So we've said here on the assignment, add some musical elements, add some sound effects, and get a little basic structure on the go, because the last week is kind of like the last chance for you to have your one-to-one assignment assessed properly. So you want to make sure that week 3 you're in a good position to then, you know, be the week after having your final assignment. So that's why we're saying start thinking about structure in lesson 3. So over here you can see he's put some effort in. He's got a nice structure. in terms of the length, let me just have a look up here. I'm going to put bar and time on so I can see. So he's just over 3 minutes in terms of the length. So obviously that's not long enough for a club tune. It's a good length for a radio tune. So I'd be feeding back and just say to him, at the moment this isn't good enough if you want something for club, but if you are aiming this as a radio track, you know, your length at the moment is good. So let's just have a listen to see how it's progressed. And my instant gut feeling about that is it's swamped too much with reverb. It feels too spacious. And you know, I was mentioning earlier on that if you add too much reverb, it can give a sense of making things a bit harder to get the clarity. It can sound a bit messy. And I feel it's losing its impact because it's got too much reverb on there. So I would immediately investigate and see what's going on there. Let's see if we can isolate where the troublemakers are. It sounds like some kind of synth lead to me. Right, okay, let's take a look at this. Right, so the lead one bounce, it's a bounce of a synth he's obviously got at home that his tutor hasn't got. And I'm looking here, it looks like it's being routed through bus 9. We've got a send, bus 9, let's have a look. No, bus 10 is the one. Do you know what? I think he's actually rendered that reverb into that file. So I would suggest, you know, for the lesson 4 assignment, taking that reverb off, you know, bouncing it again without that, and then we add the reverb in the mix. You know, that would be a personal feeling on that. How are we doing for time, guys?
About half past, so
10 minutes.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. So let's take a look. Just for a moment, I'm going to bring that down. It seems to be quite an integral part of the composition, to be honest. You know, I take it out, it feels like we're kind of missing something. Now, this case, this kind of point in the composition, it's about sort of looking at the composition, looking at, is this thing flowing? Is it telling a good little story in terms of the time that it's here? Are the elements integrating nicely with each other? Are they sitting well together? Is there anything missing? You know, are there things that I feel that we should be adding? You know, these are the kind of things that I would say to my students, you know, just to encourage them to work a little bit harder, you know, because that final assignment is, like I said, it's the end of the course, so it's where your last chance to get the proper one-to-one feedback from your tutor. So for me personally, I would say obviously the feedback is about that lead, taking the reverb off, and let's put that on as part of the final assignment. I want to take a look at these other elements he's got coming in here. Now, here's another sound that seems to be swamped with reverb, this violin that's coming through. I can see some sends on here. We've got a pretty healthy level send to bus 11, also 3 and 5. So if we take a look at this, bus 11 is a platinum verb. I would probably reduce the amount of send on here. What's the next one? We've got stereo delay, and then another reverb here, space designer. So, you know, when it comes to reverb, if you're sending to 2 reverbs at the same time, it could potentially be clouding things up. You know, it's in some times there may be a valid reason for doing that, but I think I would, in this case, encourage him to sort of reduce the amount of reverb. Like I said, it felt like it was too much. I'm going to solo this one. Let's pick this up. Let's take that reverb off and the delay. So that's the raw sound. And you see how it sits in the mix at that point. Personally, for me as well, I think musically it feels like it needs something else to kind of fill in the gap. So I'm wondering if it's that sound that was the bounced one from earlier. Let's have a look at this. See what else is there. There are also some other elements that have been muted here. So when it comes to stuff that's been muted, I'd have to then get back to my student and go, okay, what's the reason for the muting? Are you intending me to listen to that section? I'd need to take into account, you know, what's going on there. So with that, if it's muted, I definitely want to check it out and see what's going on, because quite often if someone's muted something, it means they're not very confident in what they've got there. Now, what's good about being a tutor and having this relationship with students is that it's a second set of ears, it's another viewpoint on it. And I might listen to those muted parts and go, actually, this is really working. So if you muted them because you didn't feel you liked them, then I could say, no, actually, this is good. Let's work on this some more. So it's in terms of this lesson 3, is let's try and identify if there are any things that are important that need to be done for the next one. And I would say, let's try and work some more on the violin. It feels that there's a little bit of a clash going on there. It felt messy. I'm taking a look at the piano roll here, and I'm seeing a lot of overlaps where also the timing, the quantizing, it's not locked into the grid. And I'm not saying that we should quantize absolutely everything we do and lock it into a grid, but for me that felt messy when I heard it. So I would encourage the student to basically quantize the strings here, get them sounding tighter, less overlaps. When you've got overlaps with sample-based strings, they can actually sound really messy. So I would probably recommend just to shorten these notes so that it's all nice and tidy. So that would be the kind of vibe there. So for things for them to work on between week 3 and week 4. And let's take a look then at his final assignment. I mean, I didn't teach this student on this particular course. It was another tutor called Danny, funny enough. And there's so many Dannys in the musical world. Have you not found that? It's insane, honestly. It's possibly the most popular name in the world of music production and DJing as well.
Is he bald as well?
I don't know. There's a lot of bald Dannys as well too. Yeah, like Danny Crivet, for example.
Try being called David.
David, yeah.
A lot
of Davids, yeah. I suppose there is, yeah. So anyway, on to the lesson 4, and we've got here a pretty much finished track. He's obviously listened to my advice, even though he didn't, but it's 4 minutes 40, so he's lengthened the track there. That's a much better length for the tune, and so it's much more fleshed out. Let's see how things are sounding here. Too much reverb again for me, so if he was my student, he wouldn't have that. So it just shows you how people's kind of opinions can differ as well. It's a very subjective thing. Some people might really love tons of reverb on a sound. It's just my personal feeling is that I think that should be reined back a bit. And maybe the tutor who he was working with at the time quite liked a lot of reverb. So it's like, this is the week 4. I'd be just trying to make sure that it sounds really good. I'd be taking a look at things like the master section and just seeing what he's got here. He's got a chain of inserts. He's got his gain. Look, he's reduced the gain -9 because obviously the level was too hot before it hit that final stage. There's an EQ here with a low cut at 30 hertz. Maybe that's not necessary. We'd need to look into that. A mix compressor here with a low ratio. These are all very kind of standard settings that we would encourage for the final sort of polishing of the track. So you've got the different stages here. So flowing from left to right is the equivalent of the top to bottom. So we've got some stuff going on here, a little bit of bottom end boosting, some muddiness reduction, a little bit of a lift at 10k here, and then reduction at 18k, and then the adaptive limiter here. Obviously things to watch out for, overs on the input and also the output here. So we'd be checking for a number of different things to make sure that things are sounding good and looking as they should do. I shouldn't say looking, because we shouldn't be looking really, should be using our ears. So obviously monitoring stuff like the 0 dB overs and things like that, because it's very important when you're bouncing your track at the very end. Also checking down here where my cursor is, the very, very bottom, making sure that that's 0, it's not any louder or quieter, because some people do use that as a volume control down the bottom there, bottom right hand side. So that's something else to pick out. I would have mentioned that in the early stages as well. So just going over it, listening to it properly, beginning to end, identifying if anything needs to be worked on. That's a final week 4 assessment. So the aim is to end up with a finished tune, and then that can be uploaded. And of course we've got the point blank label, so it might be considered for the label itself. So there might be a label and publishing deal there. So that's the whole concept with the DVR. Just one-to-one feedback on your assignments, but each assignment has been set up with specific criteria for you to get back on. So it's very it's very precise. It's the whole education thing. It's designed to teach you, allow you to develop week by week until you get to the very end point.
Good stuff. So hopefully that's kind of put you in the picture a little bit in terms of DVR and how it works. One other thing I should mention is that all the DVR responses that happen on your class, obviously you can see yours. So every time you submit an assignment, you can look back, as we've just done with Danny, and sort of see what the tutor's advice and guidance is on your track. You can also watch everyone else's as well. So bear in mind, you're in a classroom environment. There are other students enrolled as well. And so you can listen into their DVRs and see what kind of feedback the tutors had for them. So you're all learning from one another as well. That's the good thing about being in a class. And we enroll students from all over the world. So, the kind of, dubstep obviously is just blowing up all over the planet at the moment. But, you might be in a class with people that are kind of, really hot on the dubstep scene on the west coast of the US. There might be people who are kind of, dubstep fans from London. So it's a really good opportunity for people to sort of share experiences and swap ideas as well. There's been a few questions coming in, and to be honest, I don't think we're going to have time to tackle that many of them. Best thing I can suggest is drop us an email. You can get us anytime you like, advice@pointblanklondon.com or advice@pointblankonline.net. I'm pretty sure that'll be in the text on the YouTube channel. So drop us a line. We'd love to hear from you. Remember, classes start on Monday. So if you're kind of deliberating over which class to take, you've got a couple of days left to decide, but I wouldn't hang around because some of those classes for next week are already full. So yeah, book your spot as soon as you can. There are some free sample classes on the website that you can try that will, give you a similar idea to what we've just been looking at, of what to expect on the course, some of the kind of topics that are covered. That's a good way to get a flavour of what to expect. But yeah, classes start on Monday. We'd love to have you on board. If you've got any questions in the meantime, as I said, advice@pointblankonline.net. I'm David. This is Danny. Thank you for joining us on Friday Forum Live. See you soon.
Yeah.